want to talk about the adolescent mind and the issues that it faces today. Every day for a year and a half, I dreaded getting out of bed. I was irritable, I was angry, my appetite changed, I couldn't focus in class, and I felt so alone and so frustrated, like there was something wrong with me. I finally went through months of this torment before I decided to ask for help. And I was terrified of what might happen because mostly I was embarrassed. After the first few weeks, my life started to turn around and I had a whole new perspective about myself. It wasn't an overnight transition and it definitely took some time, but every ounce of struggle was worth it for me to feel confident in myself again. My story sounds great on the outside because of how well I'm doing now, but my story is rare because of how often this goes unnoticed. Kids are just trying to figure themselves out, and they need real support from adults who have life experiences and good advice. Feeling scared to reach out and ask for help is the hardest part. So if seeing a psychologist is a required part of a high school curriculum, it eliminates that stigma and the fear of feeling embarrassed. But I'll bring that back up again later. It's a common occurrence. Life gets really busy and we tend to let the little things slip through the cracks. We go into survival mode and we get the things done that absolutely must be done. We don't eat well, we don't sleep well, and we definitely aren't getting the 8 to 9 hours of recommended sleep each night. But underestimating the importance of mental health can lead to serious problems down the road. So why does this so easily slip our minds and cause us to fall behind on our own happiness? To address this issue head on, we must start by focusing on the correlation of poor mental health to other aspects of daily life and take a look at the seriousness of neglecting to deal with this issue. For high school students like me, it may seem like we have the world at our fingertips and we're thriving and growing up happy. These are supposed to be some of the best days of our lives. This just isn't true. Simply put, we have so much pressure and so much stress in our lives that things start piling up on our plates and something has to go. Unfortunately, more often than not, the thing that happens to go tends to be our mental health. We have hundreds of different responsibilities and demands each night that weigh heavily on our minds, and not only that, but social media and technology has become a catalyst for depression in teens. Strangers from the internet can make you feel awful about yourself just by typing behind a screen, and not to mention the countless number of adults who tell you to just stop being sad or toughen up. But unfortunately, you can't just toughen up and get over a mental disorder, seeing as they are chemical imbalances in your brain. It's hard to watch because I know there's a ton of ways to help people and they don't have to feel so alone. There's a million ways to help people who are suffering, we just haven't been creative enough yet. There's a difference between somebody who can handle this type of busy life and someone who can't, and the demands that this life creates. It's found in the set of skills and coping mechanisms. The adolescent brain is still developing, and doesn't yet fully have the capability to process, reason, decide, or make decisions. In addition, we lack the wisdom that comes from only years and years of life experiences. School psychologists are extensively trained in child and teen development. The CDC concluded that 10% of all kids ages 3 to 17 have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD. The school that these children attend plays a major role in aiding their learning process so that they receive the therapies and support that they need. This is yet another major reason that school psychologists would have a huge impact on a daily basis. So the next thing to address is the solution. There are adults out there who are specially trained in helping teenagers cope with these types of situations. Clinical psychologists who specialize in adolescent health have an abundance of advice and ability to help you put more tools in your toolbox when it comes to coping with life. School counselors are also trained in this sort of thing, but they can't handle the task of helping every student in their schooling, as well as grades, college planning, and other special events. If the money and time is well spent in putting this as a required part of high school education, the benefits would be reaped for years to come. Aside from day-to-day help for students with learning disabilities, psychologists are trained in crisis and trauma prevention. While it is very unfortunate, crime and violence are often found in high schools, and having the resources to handle this is not only essential, but it'll help every student who's been touched by tragedy. I have recently had the opportunity to interview Dr. Bree Anderson, who is a child psychologist out of Longmont, Colorado. We talked about how the teenage brain needs just as much nurturing as a growing infant who's learning to talk and walk. It's not meant to sound degrading, but it's true. Most people act under the assumption that once you're old enough to drive a car, you don't need help anymore. But she assured me that just because I can drive a car does not mean I'm mature. In fact, the frontal lobe does not even fully develop until age 25. So until your brain is ready to take on the world alone, you shouldn't have to be afraid to ask for help. She also stated to me that a lot of schools teach students how to spot the signs of depression and anxiety and who to tell if you spot somebody. But this is all the wrong solution. Adding the stress of making sure all of your friends are doing okay, as well as focusing on yourself, is the wrong approach. Obviously, if you spot somebody who's struggling, be sure to tell someone in authority and get them the help they need. But we should be focusing on the prevention and leaving all of this up to capable adults and professionals. If the funding were available, it should become something mandatory for students to get preventative mental health services in the form of a class. Once a week, there should be a required time set aside for a mental well-being check-in with a school psychologist. Frederick High School, for example, has an advisory period 3 or 4 times a month that is required to graduate. If schools utilize this time or any other time that was strictly dedicated to mental health to have students talk to a psychologist, even in a group setting, it would be a huge step in the right direction. Mental health is so incredibly underserved and underfunded. In fact, mental health is now becoming an epidemic and a national crisis. I promise I'm not about to get political, so just bear with me. But I recently watched a video of a man named Aaron Stark who almost became a school shooter at just 18 years old. He's now a motivational speaker and a father, all because somebody was able to get through to him and treat him with decent human compassion so that he was able to avoid the biggest mistake of his life. He said, "If I had a rifle, I would have been a killer. But if I had love, I would have never wanted a rifle." How can we let kids with such deep-seated emotional issues go so unnoticed that they decide to turn to violence for help? He talks about how many factors, including his abusive upbringing, struggles with mental health, and lack of help, pushed him to the point of wanting to commit a mass shooting. The fact that one person was able to reach through to him and avoid killing dozens just goes to show how massive change is needed right now. People just need to know that it's okay to talk about it, that it's okay to speak up to your friends and family about it, and that if you do decide to talk to somebody about how you're feeling, it's going to be okay. It's easy to overlook these issues because at first they're small and seemingly manageable, but it's clearly proof that if we don't manage them at the small stages, they can snowball into catastrophic ordeals. Prevention, just as is the case with physical health, is just as important in the mental health realm. Placing more psychologists in secondary schools and empowering them to reach as many students as possible would put those tools in your toolbox so that minor problems are solved in the early stages before they have the chance to become life-altering or potentially life-threatening events. There are major effects and downsides to not treating mental health early on. Other than just feeling sad and down all the time, you can increase your risk of addiction and substance abuse, chronic stress, increased suicide rates, heart attack, stroke, and many more. If you ask me, it's time to hold those in leadership positions responsible for these things, and it's time we stop blaming kids who so desperately need help. It's time we stop giving our thoughts and prayers and put our money where our mouth is. This is not supposed to scare you, and I promise that there are a ton of good days among the bad ones. But I want you to panic a little bit and feel a little bit of the fear that some students feel every day. And I want you to take action. I want everyone to remember what I said today and to be kind to everybody you meet around you because you never know what somebody could be going through. Thank you.